So to understand the avodah of Yitzchak, Kiato Avinu, why Dafke Yitzchak is the avodah of Tainug. So first he introduced the Shaila. Well, he mentioned that there are three Be'eres, and the three Be'eres of Yitzchak, Eishek, Sitna, and Rechayvos, correspond to B'chol Avav, V'chanash, V'chol Meitcha. To understand the avodah of B'chol Meitcha, these three avos, so he prefaces the kasha of the Marsha. He says it's the Magid asked the kasha, and also it's Chidusha got this Marsha. Marsha came earlier. A kolponim. So it's the following question. The Gemara reconciles the psukim of when asafta the goncha you gather it, or vam the zorim, that when it's eisin it's tzedek shalmokim, then vam the zorim strangers will do it. To Marsha, the Magid ask that this pasuk asafta the goncha is vayim shemoya tishma. So the answer, yes, but it's missing b'chol ba'itcha. So why is b'chol ba'itcha? Why, since that's missing, so the whole avodah is missing? So he says because it's to the pnimis dikitay. This is the lashon of the Gemara. Eisin it's saying nishamokim. Here they're doing the will, here they're not doing the will. That's what the Gemara says. The Marsha explains what that means. So the point being that Eisin it's saying nishamokim is only with an ava b'chol ba'itcha. Correct. So to understand all of this, you have to understand. What's Rotzen and what's Makif? So he started to explain that Rotzen is Makif and Makim is a Malak Alamim. So therefore, Oisin Etzenish Makim means the Yichud of Seviv Mamalik, which is Kolos Avodah. That's the general Avodah. The rest of the Oisin, how far did we go? Not very far. Huh? No, so let's continue. Because he's going to trace, here's where the word relative, actually the word relative is not the Indian, but it's just again that the integration, Hashem Echad, it's one Eibishter, and the whole system that he creates is based on a binary system of Giloi and Helem, Gvul and Bligvul, Eir and Keli. And that's the whole Indian of Yichud of Kutsha B'Lichoshintes. He's going to trace these dargas, milamata l'mayla, higher and higher. Which dargas? Rotzen and Mokim, or Seivim Mamal. So by the number 36, can you do a binyan page Mem Dalid, Eis Dalid, 4 lines down? Can you do a binyan Hashemis, Sheseva B'chinas Shem Havaya? Seviv is transcendent. Mamalu b'china Shem Alikim. Imken yichud seviv malu in yichud avayot likim. So what does it mean? Yichud seviv malu, which is Oisir Ritzayin Shem Makim. So that is the yichud avayot likim shal zeisa bezoyer the klala b'deiraisa about which the Zohar says this is the great principle of the Torah. The objective of the Torah, the yichud of seviv of avayot likim. The inay. In Ayichud, the Seviv Mamala, Kola, Kola Madreges, the Ishtalshalas. So this Inyan, this unity is in all of the levels of Ishtalshalas. Kola Madreges, Nechlalim, Bebei Shemis, Havayalikim. All levels have 2 dimensions, Havayalikim. There's the revelation and the concealment component, the Eir and the Keli, etc. Now, Sheyesh Bahem, Kama Madreges. This itself, there's many levels. The Havaya, one level of Havaya is beyond time, past, present, and future, all as well. Well, the Maili, we didn't do this. So Haya, even as Shem Havaya is Shem Havaya She'ein Bein Nekudas. There's usually Shem Havaya is written with Nekudas, with vowels, different vowels, in as much that depending on the context of the pasuk, it's expressing a different manifestation of Hashem. All the Kabbalah Svarim have all of the Nekudas written on Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei, Our Sidurim do not have Yud Kevavke altogether. They're represented by Yud Yud because of the Kedusha of it. If you go back, the early Chabad Sidurim did, but then the later editions not, because of the way, to lessen the sanctity. But in the Kabbalah Svan, Al Rebbe Siddur also in some places. On every time it says Shem Havaya, there's how it's spelled, because it has 4 different miluyim. Ab, ban, ma. Yeah. Shem ba, Shem ban, Shem ab. That's it. 3 basic ways. Ksag, 4 ways. And they also would say, also underneath it, would be, or on top, underneath it, the Nakudas, the different vowels meaning different midas. Segel is generally chesed, etc. So then there's a level of Shem Havaya, which is She'ein Bei Nakudas, where there are no letters, because letters, or vowels rather, are a certain distilled revelation. So there's a level of Shem Havaya, which is Ein Bei Nakudas. This is similar to what we learned in the previous few Maamarim ago. Beyond time is bound to time, but then there's a dargah, it's not beyond time. So beyond time is Echad. And then there's a dargah, not that it's infinite, not finite. It's purely infinite, about which there's nothing that can be said. But that is similar to the thing of Shem Havaya, without Nakudas, the pure Bligvul, not in the Bligvul sense of measured against Gvul, but fundamentally beyond the whole notion of time. And then L'mayli Yoseh, the Shem Havaya, VeYitzchak, and then there's a level of VeYitzchak, not as they're fused in 3 words, but it's one. That's a level higher than that. I'm sorry, I skipped it. I should not saying straight. Then the lower level is VeYitzchak. Finished. Higher that is no Nakudas. And then there's a level, it brings if I think I'm base. No. There's a level of Shem Havaya where there's no pirush at all. No explanation, not translation, not Hayivik and not being, just higher than any pirush. So there's many levels of Shem Havaya. So we're saying the Yichud of Havaya and Likim is not one level, one experience. It's an endless avodah, just demonstrating, illustrating this in Shem Havaya itself, having all of these levels. And for sure, Velikim, Rabbi, Elikim to begin with is plural. Begimatria Teva, and it's Gematria Teva, which is plurality, which is nature. Here he's not bringing so much the different levels of Shem Elikim, like Shem Havaya. That's a chiddush. There's different levels of Shem Havaya. There's no chiddush in levels of Shem Elikim. Shem Elikim, to begin with, it's about the vision. His very name is Lashon Rabim, Begimatria Teva. So Mishdem Muvan, Sheyichad Havaya Velikim, that the unity of Havaya Velikim, Shehin Yichud Sefer Mali, which is the Yichud Sefer Mali, Yichud Ma'oban, which is the Yichud of that's the Chasna. The whole thing is to explain the diffika that Yitzchak was coming from Be'er Lachai. So that is all why the Torah describes that. That was the Shaila. Because this is the Yichud of Ma'oban, Chasna. Mashpia Makabel, Ma'azah, Malchus. So it's understood that this Yichud Ma'oban that we describe it, Yesh the B'chol HaMadregas. It's not on one level, but all the levels, as we indicated now, Shem Havaya, all these levels, and so on. We're clear? Now, Yichud Zenase, Adei Ma'isa Mitzvahs, this Yichud is down to the Mitzvah, Shazau Shemim, Ket Makal Mitzvah. This is the reason that we say before every mitzvah section. We don't. As the Chassidish world does, as you know, we say before Baruch She'amar, and we have in mind all the mitzvahs we're going to do in the course of the day. So we say that he's doing the mitzvah for the purpose of uniting. It's not what, we have to rephrase that. Not for the purpose of, that's what the mitzvah is. The mitzvah is affecting the yichud of Kodesh Bricha Shchinta. The Kodesh Bricha, B'chinas Soivev, Kudsha Bricha, the Holy One, blessed be so holy, means Soivev, transcend the Shekadosh and Muvdal. That is sacred and removed. Ushchinte, which means to dwell, shchina, indwelling, b'chinas mamale, that's mamale kalali. Sheshcheichen lemata, that dwells below or within the matter. So the mitzvah affects the yichud. Now, so this exists. So now he says that the mitzvah does it. Now going back to the inyan of yichud, seviv of malitz, and all of the levels. Now he's going to trace this back down. Dine klolos in general. It goes on Zohar Malchus. The Kutchabricha, so that's the male. The holy one, it's also blessed be he, all masculine. That's Zohar. Shchinte, which is feminine, B'chinas Malchus. That's in general. But if we probe deeper, B'chinas Malchus Atzma, in Malchus herself, yes, Beis Madreges Elo, even in Malchus it has the level of Kutchabricha within Malchus. And that is that Malchus Moishe Batzilus. As Malchus is not Tzilus, she's Sfira, Misfira is not Tzilus. It's all bound up with the other Sfiras of Atzilus. The Iohi Vegarmoi is causations of Chada 1. And what Darga is that? That's Kutchabricha. And that includes all of the Garmoihi, all of his, as it were, causations or Kalim of Atzilus. So there's a level of Malchus herself that she's a Mashpia, part of the Mashpia mode. And you can have Shchinte, when she descends to Biyah, that's when Malchus is called Shchinte. Meaning, now comes deep sea diving, friends. Deep stuff. You need to at least understand rudimentarily. What did he just say? He just said that in Malchus there are two levels. Malchus says she's Natzilos, bound up with Natzilos, that's the union of Zoh, that's Kutchabricha. And then there's Malchus, when it becomes called Shechina, so this is Malchus descends into Biyah. So even the Nekuda Malchus that pierces the parasa. The parasa we're talking about is the parasa between Atzilus and Bria. There's a veil. And Malchus descends into the level of this Alter Rebbe in Tanya, and get us HaKodesh. This is the Kodesh of every Malchus Kolamim, of every Olam. So Malchus of Atzilus descends and is invested in the Heichal of Kodesh of Bria. He doesn't elaborate in Tanya what exactly that is, Lagabe the Spheres. It means the Pnimius of Bria. Shodugma Sidis on the Shama Lamato. This is like the Neshama descending. Terem Shabbat Chayis Bislapshus. Before it's explaining Malchus being mislabish in the Heichal Kodesh. That's the Pnimius of Biyah. And then it manifests and creates and sustains and animates Biyah. So this first stage, he's saying, is similar to the Neshama descending into the body, Terem Sheba Chayis Mislapshus, before the Neshama is invested, the Pnimius, in each limb and organ. So that's the analogy of Malchus invested where? In Kodesh the Bria, before it manifests. First, its essential presence, that's the Kavanah Pnimius, in other words, that is expressed there, and then the process of creation. That's the manifestation. So this is called B'china Shchinte. This is called Shchina. So this is Malchus as it's already invested in Bria. Kolshkein, she's pashtes orasa Malchus, she mistabeshes b'Bria. So for sure, the next step, where this essential presence is then manifest, as it were, in Bia, that's called Shechina. So there's two levels of Shechina. We just identified and different levels of Shechina, even within Malchus. Was that clear? This, please. So that's in detail to identifying these two levels within Malchus. More generally, so this was Malchus Bepratis in Biyah. We identified two levels in Biyah. As Malchus rests in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and then that's the Etzem HaShechina, and then as Malchus manifests, animated, truly create Biyah, that is a manifested level of the Shechina. Now he's saying, even in Malchus K'moshe Batzilos, but then there's Malchus that is in Atzilus. Before we said it was more Mashpia, but then relative to the Atzilus, so it's Shechinte. And Zo Kutchebichu. Okay, so end of the discussion of Malchus, just to show how relative it is. Malchus Shechina, there's Malchus Shechina in Atzilus, the Gabi Zo. There's Malchus Shechina in Pnimius of Biyah. That's the Shechina. Lagabe Malchus in as the final level of Atzilus. And then there's Malchus manifested in Biyah that makes the Pnimius of Malchus the Mashpia. So it's just endless. The relative interplay and it's not just interplay, but the relative identity of Shechina is all relative to which world and the levels above it. So this inyan of Yichud Kutchebichu Shechinte, he's saying, is not one inyan, but is affected on all of the levels. And he continues tracing it back further. Further, this Chachman Bina, Eirin Keli, Ma'oban, Kutchebrichu Shechinte. It's different words because it specifically means different levels, but different words for the same general inyan. We're on page Mem Hey. There are 3 lines, not 3 lines, first line, end of the first line. Yes, now till now we're talking about Malchus and Zoh. But there's a higher yichud, and that's b'chinas chachma bina. The chachma should b'chinas nekuda, b'chinas ayin. Chachma, which is a point. Ayin, nothingness relative to the developed idea. There are no words a person can express at the level of chachma. There's no way to express it. You saw the light, flash of inspiration. So that's called kutchebricho. That's holy, removed from what? From consciousness, from words, from development. Or bina shebanasa says chalkas the pratim. So bina, which then takes the nekud of chachma, the ayin chachma, and the process of development. Or b'chinas elikim v'shchinte. So that's a level of elikim and shchina. This is, of course, one of the biggest sugyas in Chassidus, obviously, because there's the whole avodah, there's yichud kutchebrichu shchinte. The ability of Bina to take the ayin and develop it is a bigger chiddush than the emergence of the Nakuda of Chachma to begin with. It's a deeper koyach in the nefesh as a reflection of the way it is on high, that to take the idea, which is completely abstract in its initial form, to be able to grasp it, and then to bring it down and articulate it in a whole structure of binim lashon binyan, is a deeper koyach than the actual discovery. Can you do it? That Malchus is rooted deeper in the really connected to Atzmos, more so than the Mashpia Kutchebrichu. Elikim is rooted deeper than Shem Havaya. This will be explained at the end with an incredible diak, as we'll see. But now we're tracing this Kutchebrichu, this yichud of Kutchebrichu Shchinte ever higher. So we spoke about Zol Malchus, now Chachma bin Elamali Yosef. Even higher still, in Igama Chachma Sheresh Hasvidas. So Chachma, relative to the rest of Atzilus, is this flash of inspiration. It's removed. It's Kodesh. It's Muvdal. That's true. But Lagabe Haydin Atzilus Nikra Shchinte. It's called Shechina. This is the indwelling. This is already the emergence of finitude in some way. What's Kudsha Bricha there? Keser. Keser. So therefore now we're talking about the yichud of Keser and Chachma. Friends, all to say that you do a mitzvah lamata, we are affecting the entire ishtalshalos and the unity and the oneness in all of ishtalshalos. As wonderful as ishtalshalos is, every level stands on its own. They're all interconnected and they're harmonious, but they're not one. They're not one. A yid does the avodah lamata with his neshama in a guf. That's the marriage. And marriage reflects that and brings about oneness. So he's bringing about oneness in the highest madregis. He's not taking us lifnei atzimtzum. Which is why when man was created, the angels trembled. They're just in Bria. They knew that their whole matzav is dependent on a mitzvah of a yid. And of course, the opposite is also true. We might add, therefore, too, that a home in general, an atmosphere of a home, the whole point of the marriage is the home, the bayis, the dira b'tachtonim that you build. So the atmosphere of oneness, you should know, it's affecting l'mayla. Shalom bayis lamata, that's Yicha Kutshabricha Shchinte lamata, creates shalom bayis lamayla. So they're all on edge up there, you know. And have mercy at all the time. But that's not completely true. I mean, there's Gan Eden and they bask in it and they glory in it. But the ones in the know, they know that it's all dependent on us. And what they're experiencing is temporary to begin with. The whole Ziv HaShechina. Okay, back to the Maimon. So, Chachma is Shechina, high relative to higher, and what's the mashpia? Kutshabichus keser. Shadakmos bekeches hanefesh. What's the parallel down here? In rotzen v'tainog, rotzen v'tainog is keser. Shem keches makivnit transcendent, and chachma is compared to rotzen v'tainog, which are completely almost impossible to articulate. The true rotzen, the true tainog. Whereas Chachma is already, it's an experience, it's already Keiches Pnimiyim. So that's the relative model of Pnimiyim Makif. Now even higher still, and then there's the Yichel Kutshabricha Shchinta as it is in Abiyah Klolim. What is that? So we've encountered this several times. There's Abiyah Bepratius, Atzilus, B'yitzir Asiyah. And then Abiyah B'chlolus is starting from the top. So Atzilus Hakloli is Ein Sof. Bri Hakloli is Ak. Yitzir Hakloli is Keser. And Asi Hakloli is Atzilus. Not shocked because everything is relative. It's the same models repeating over and over and over. So that's clear. So Atzilus Haklolis is Ein Sof. Biyah Haklolis is Adam Kadman. Ak. Yitzir HaKlolis is Keser, and Asi HaKlolis is Atzilus. So now you say, so likewise, it's all Atzilus and higher. Till now we're talking Elam Atzilus, Keser. Now we're talking in the broadest picture. Tekeshem Shem Malchus Atzilus HaProtis. So we're following this, yeah? Just like that Malchus Atzilus HaProtis, classic Malchus of Atzilus. When Malchus descends in Biyani Kana Shechina, it's called Shechina. So now, in the bigger picture we just painted, so the kav that is drawn from Malchus, it's all lifnei atzimtzum. It says Malchus that Atzilus HaKlolis. What did we say as Atzilus HaKlolis? Ein Sof. Ein Sof Baruch Hu. And then there's the Spheres Ein Sof. There's Dargis in Ein Sof. So what's the Shechina there? It's Malchus, the Ein Sof. We're following? Yes? Say that again. Atzilus HaKlolis is Ein Sof. That's the highest level we're starting with. Now we're going to identify the level of Malchus there. Because there is the Esa Spheres, the Ein Sof, these infinite Esa Spheres. which are roots in essence for the Saknuzas. There's all these dargis. But it's all part of the Ein Sof. So there's Malchus the Ein Sof. So this is the Kav. That's how it begins. A Kav is drawn from Malchus the Ein Sof, literally a projection, or Mistabeshes b'biyah kloliim, and is invested in the general levels of biyah, which is what? Bria is Ak and Kesa and Atzilus. Kiyadua, as is known in brackets, she'etzem HaKav made b'pchinas Ak. We're just saying now that the essence of the Kav, and to understand all of this is Ayin Beis and Marvov and all of the Rebbe Hashav's memory. Today is, of course, Chav Cheshvan. Anyway, let's just get the language and again, rudimentarily, at least the geography right. Whatever imagery we have in our head is something. You remind me one day, maybe they could be of the Rebbe on the Ravid's argument with the Rambam, very fundamental argument. The Rambam says that the Torah says the hand of Hashem, the eyes of Hashem, etc., even the feet. So it's absolutely all metaphors, and to consider it physical is heresy. And the Ravid argues. The Ravid argues. Torah uses the language Ishposhet understands that way. It's also true. And I forgot which it was in the Mems. I remember it was I don't know if it's in the Kutei Sichos. I don't know if it ended up being book after. I don't remember. But beautiful, beautiful arichas. And the Rebbe was explaining the Rambam then in those days, starting to think the Rambam, in explaining the shit of the Ravid, you would think that Chassidus would reject it, out of hand. Some kind of corporeality, some physicality, and that's emes, absolutely impossible. Kfirah. So he explains it there, reconciles the Rambam and the Ravid, and justifies the Ravid. I'm just saying this, that even if we're having imagery in our head, and whatever it is, of lights, etc., so it's not naught. The language is Ein Sof, and we're physical, and we have to start with the physical imagery. There's no other way. And it's almost sholim from our own bodies and nefesh. So it's not like, it's foolish, or God forbid a waste of time. It's true. The understanding that you have, whatever level, is emes. Okay. Too many parentheses. We're going to get the flow of things. Yeah, so again, Hashem Shem Malchus Datzilus. Aprotis. Just like the specific Malchus of Atzilus. It's called Shechina when Malchus descends into Biyah. Kamoikin Akav, so likewise in Atzilus HaKlolis, which is the Ein Sof. What's Malchus there? It's Malchus the Ein Sof. And the Malchus then produces this Kav. This line, this is the whole beginning of creation starts there. This is Malchus Atzilus HaKlolos. So Mr. Beshes, but Biyah Klolim, it's invested in Biyah Klolim, which is all pre-Atzilus Mamish, at least Bri Yitzira. And what's that? That's Ak, and then Kesed. You do it. She'etzem Akav maybe b'chinas Ak, the Etzem Akav, as opposed to the external level of the Kav, is made in Ak. Adam the Bria Klolos, that's Ak in that is Bria in the general sense. The Oris HaKav ba'kudim and the kudim. That's the Etzem HaKav. And then there's the heart of the Kav, which is the Akudim and the Kudim, which we've learned about. That's all. Akudim is all of the members. It is Ak. All of the Oris in one Keli in the Kudim is Elam Atoyu, and Ovrudim is Elam Atzilus. Okay, so just the descent then continues. Acho Agamba Atzilus, which is Elam Avrudim. Adam Dasia Klolis, that's Adam Dasia Klolis. Concluding, Nikra Shchinte. So this level, which level? Malchus the Ein Sof that reveals the Kav, from which then emerges all the levels we just described, all the way down to Atzilus. So this level is called Shchinte. V'Eir Ein Sof, what's Kutshe Brichu? That's Ein Sof, the Igel HaGodlo Shlifnei HaTzimtzum, v'B'chinas Kutshe Brichu. So that which is, even the Bam is the Ein Sof, the Klolis is also Lifnei HaTzimtzum, but okay. We'll just leave it this way, that Atzilus HaKlolis is post-Tzimtzum. B'chlal, it's not. But this Dargis and Lifnei HaTzimtzum. So, this Negeir. But It's all relative. We just get the general idea that the Ein Sof, the Eagle HaGodel, the great circle, so-called, that's Kutshe Brichu. And what Shchinte? Malchus the Ein Sof. Okay? We got basically the idea. Basically for sure, I hope. Yes? Little feedback? Good. And like we said before about the specific Malchus Atzilus, earlier in the Maimon. There's a level of Malchus of Atzilus. It's also Shechina relative to Zoh. Still continuing in Malchus Atzilus, that's all the Klolos. We just said now that Malchus Atzilus the Klolos. What's that? That's Malchus the Ein Sof. That's invested in Ak, etc. Now he's saying there's also the level of Malchus Atzilus HaKlolos. There's a level even Koydem HaTzimtzum. The Sherish of the Kav, the source of the Kav. And that's also Shchinte, relatively speaking, even if that's Tzimtzum. Conclusion. There's the higher purity, the lower purity. The Tira Yilog, actually, it's continuing, sorry, not conclusion. That's before the Tzimtzum, the Tira Tato, Achar Tzimtzum is post Tzimtzum. But Prati Yisrael, Gam Koydem HaTzimtzum, even before the Tzimtzum, Yeshna Beisim Madreges, the Tiri Love, Tiri Tato. As we're just saying now. Shamalchus the Ein Sof, Kameshu Koydem HaTzimtzum, B'chinas Tiri Tato. The Malchus the Ein Sof, before the Tzimtzum, this is Koydem HaTzimtzum, not post. Again, there's these two levels. That's called the lower purity, Shchinte. Well, the Ma'ili Yosef, B'kol HaTzoysh Koydem HaTzimtzum, now he takes us to the highest level. If that Tzimtzum, it is in the oil itself, it's all Giloi. There's the external level, which is a connection to Olam, at post Tzimtzum. This level of Chitzonius is the source for Olamus. That's Shchinte. And then then the Etzima oil, this is all if that Tzimtzum. So again, the general idea is it's all relative. And now he took us back to the source. Lifnei HaTzimtzum, the first level is pure Ein Sof, but there there's Chitzonius and Pnimius. If you like, Keich HaGvul, Keich HaBli. There too, Mashpia, Makabel, yes, no, this binary system of revelation and containment. It starts at the highest levels. So concluding the Ois, V'zeh Kuch Icha Kuch Bricho Shchinte, so this is what a Yid does. Shadei Maisa Mitzvah Shoyin Amshachas and B'chinas Shekoydem HaTzimtzum, the B'chinas L'achar HaTzimtzum, he pearls this yichud on the highest levels from before the Tzimtzum, that it should be this, the oil should be drawn into post Tzimtzum, and then the more detail he said earlier, but overall he's just covering this now. V'chem Shachma K'esel L'chachma, tracing it all down. K'esel L'chachma, that's another yichud. Chachma bin another yichud. Another yichud down into our world. That's affected through Ma'isa Mitzvahs. Tomorrow gets very interesting. I just read the first two lines because I want to tell the Chof Cheshvan, and I'll mention the connection to the Barashab. Just the first few lines now, the bottom of the page. So this is the meaning that when you didn't do the Tzeni Shamokin, it's B'chom Beitcha, that's the Tachlis HaShlemus. So the Rotz B'chinas Soivet, U'mokim B'chinas Umale. Clear? Now, he says, Vini Be'emek HaMelech. Vini Be'emek HaMelech, so this is a sefer. It's funny, he's going to bring him, we'll learn it tomorrow. He brings him and then rejects his opinion. Why bring him? He was actually somewhat controversial. I'm telling you what the Rebbe said. Because he differed with the Arizal on many core issues. And the Talmidei of the Arizal, Chaim Vital, all opposed him, came out and they opposed his shittas. Now, Chassidus does bring from him. They would bring from him now, although he's going to not. But some fundamental inyonim, I brought down Chassidus from him. So I'm just saying, so the Rebbe once said by Fabrengen that those that one of the things that his chidushim was that he spoke dargis lifnei hatzimtzum. Eliezer did not. And so Chassidus quotes him a lot. We had it ourselves more than once. But so the Rebbe said that those who want to explore this further, he's not advising. That's what Chassidus quotes. Chassidus knows the Kabbalah what something is clearly disagrees with. So if you want to explore it, the Rebbe said this, Ein Beis and Samach Vav, all those in Yonma are explained there. All the things he addresses are explained in the light of Chassidus Chabad, which is primarily based on the teachings of Chaim Vital Dar Yizal, but also incorporates from other sources, including the Eimek HaMelech. He lived in Germany. His name was Naftali. If no mistake, lived in Frankfurt. Okay, so B'ez Hashem, we'll see that tomorrow. I'll look up, get some more detail about his life.